Wow, what a massive, massive night of college football over the weekend, and a big, big win for the Dogs last night. In fact, I think they may have hit the jackpot because the Georgia Bulldogs are playing in the SEC championship. Thanks to the SEC basically cannibalizing itself yesterday. It started at noon. Ole Miss going down to the Gators in the swamp. All Ole Miss had to do was win this game, beat Mississippi State, and they're in. But they just fumbled their season away. Embarrassing loss. They're out. They're toast. They don't matter. Season's over, right? Then we saw Oklahoma not only take down Alabama, but kind of crush them. That defense was outstanding, containing Jalen Milroe. 3 interceptions. They won by 21 points in Norman. Alabama season, boom, they're done. They're out of it. Season's over, as I almost knock the camera off right there. But listen, if you're an Alabama fan, the Yankees are still going to be good next year. The Lakers, I guess, are good. The Cowboys stink, so tough road, but your season's over. And then, of course, Auburn taking down Texas A&M in one of the wildest games of the night. So now, Georgia's sitting pretty. And I know when the news started to come in, when Auburn was beating Texas A&M and Alabama was throwing interceptions left and right, Georgia fans were starting to notice, hey, if things go the way they're trending right now, Georgia's going to play in the SEC championship game. And I know a lot of you watching were, seeing that news and saying, yeah, I don't really want that to happen because all Georgia had to do was beat Georgia Tech and they're in the playoff. And I still think that's all it's going to take. But I could be wrong. But if you're worried about it, I get it. The committee doesn't look like they know what they're talking about. And Georgia now has to play an extra game, which could be their third loss. And, the way the committee's been ranking these teams, losses matter. So if you're a Georgia fan, the last thing you want to see happen is you beat Georgia Tech and then you have to play another game, basically an elimination game, possibly. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. And I think in the future, we're going to see both SEC, the teams competing for the SEC championship, automatic. They both get in. If you play for the SEC title, you're one of the top 12 teams, right? Let's not kid ourselves. And starting next year, that's how it should be. If you play in the SEC title game, you're in the playoffs. If you win it, you get the bye. If not, you shouldn't be punished. And I think a lot of Georgia fans are worried that Georgia will be punished if they lose. But that's not the right mindset. And you know that deep down. If you're watching this video, you love the Dogs. And for a lot of you, I know it wasn't a great thought about having them play another game, but this is where Georgia wants to be. This is the easiest way for them to win a national championship. It's winning the SEC, getting that bye. So Georgia does have everything in front of them, and that's how they want it. You got to remember, Kirby Smart said after that 2021 national championship game, we will not be hunted. We will do the hunting. So if you're a Georgia fan, you need to sit back and say, who wants to take on these Dogs right now? Texas A&M, it's going to be one of those two teams. If Texas A&M beats Texas, which could happen, right? It is so much different this year, especially compared to other years. Winning on the road is so tough. Texas A&M couldn't do it yesterday. Alabama got throttled on the road. Ole Miss lost it all on the road. So I could see Texas A&M. I believe the game is in College Station, and unless I'm crazy, they can absolutely beat Texas. And if the Dogs play the Aggies in Atlanta, you could not ask for a better position if you're a Georgia fan. And even if it's Texas, Georgia beat them by 15 points, physically abused them up and down the field on the road. Who's to say they can't do it in Atlanta, right? And Quinn Ewers might be out for the A&M game. I think this could be a situation where it's Arch Manning against A&M and Arch Manning, if they win that game, against the Dogs. So again, if you're Georgia, everything is working out perfectly for you in a way to get the easiest path to a national championship. Because even Saturday morning, even when Florida beat Ole Miss, Georgia fans weren't thinking about possibly playing in the SEC championship game. Again, it was still beat Georgia Tech, get into the playoff. You're probably not going to host. Maybe you do, depending on how, everything else goes. But then A&M lost, and Alabama lost, and Ole Miss lost. So Georgia's in, and they're in a good spot. I think Georgia could beat Texas A&M in College Station. I definitely think they can beat them in Atlanta. Same with Texas, right? They've already beat them on the road. And I know it's tough to beat a team twice. Totally get that. They ran through Kentucky. I thought that was a pretty solid win, 31-14, right? So I think it was a competitive half, and then Texas was Texas. So, but we'll see what their quarterback situation is. Georgia can beat both of those teams. And if that were to be the case, they get the playoff. Maybe they play in Atlanta in the quarters and then go from there. So this is about as well as you could draw it up. If you're a Georgia fan going into the season, the goal was to play in the SEC championship game, because if you win the conference, you get the bye, and that's what you want. That's what we're all playing for, right? To win the conference championship and make things easier in the playoffs for you. But this is a crazy year all the way around. Bad day for the SEC. Like, let's not say that it was a bad day for the SEC. But if you're a Georgia fan, you don't care. Who cares? Georgia carried the SEC in 21 and 22 and through the regular season last year until Alabama. So if you're Georgia, who cares what the rest of the conference is doing? Win the conference, get your bye. Don't worry about anything else. Who cares? The conference parity stuff, SEC, it doesn't matter to a certain extent. But it was wild yesterday seeing Tennessee fans doing the Gator chomp, and the playoffs and everything have really turned the game kind of upside down in a way. And you've got two lost teams who still have a chance to get a first round bye in the playoffs, and that's exactly what you wanted. So Georgia's clicking at the right times. They're getting a little healthier, and I've always said this team could still win a national championship. And I said that after kind of an ugly win against Mississippi State. I said it after Florida, and I still believed it after Ole Miss. I just said they got to play a lot better. It was a tough game on the road, kind of spiraled away from them a little bit. They lost the battle in the trenches. Season wasn't over, and it's clearly not. They took Ole Miss's best shot. They were on the road. Yeah, I totally see how they lost that game, but they turned it around against Tennessee at home. Again, Georgia's probably had the toughest schedule in the country so far, and they've weathered the storm. They're in the SEC championship game after that brutal schedule. Still have to beat Tech. I don't think they're going to lose to Georgia Tech. If they've got a freshman Aaron Philo coming to Athens at night, it's not a 0% chance, but I mean, that would be the upset of the season if Georgia lost to Tech. Beat Georgia Tech, beat Texas or Texas A&M, both completely beatable, obviously. Get that first round bye, and you're set up for a possibly, special season once again. I still think Oregon and Ohio State are probably the best teams in the country, the two best teams. They're both getting in. It looks like Penn State's going to get in. Indiana could still find a way in. I think Notre Dame is in if they beat Southern Cal. One of the Boise States are in. Miami or SMU could be in, maybe both. So Tennessee, I think, deserves to be in. I think they're one of the 12 best teams, but Ole Miss, done. You're toast. You're out of here. Alabama, boom, you're out. See you next year. And then A&M and Texas, I think the loser of that game could probably be out of the playoff. Don't tell me the loser of that game is one of the top 12 teams in college football. It wouldn't be true at that point. So the SEC is kind of hurting itself a little bit. It's been great to watch, and if you're a Georgia fan, you shouldn't really care. It doesn't really matter. The Dogs have a chance to win it all. They've got to take care of business. They're getting healthier, especially if they get those running backs back. Trevor Etienne will be huge. They can beat Georgia Tech without Trevor Etienne, but you'd really like to have him as healthy as possible in that SEC championship game. Defensively, tough game against UMass. Really, just the effort wasn't there. The tackling wasn't there. I expect that to be a completely different situation with Tech coming to town with so much at stake. Rivalry game. I think they're gonna, play with a little more edge, a little more fire, a little more aggression than they did against UMass. But the offense was clicking. Not all the time. It was still sloppy here and there, but the scoreboard is the scoreboard, and they scored 51 points offensively. A lot of touchdowns, so they're finding a rhythm. If they can have a big win over Tech, have a solid four-quarter, strong showing, this team gets rolling and healthy, they'll be tough to beat for anyone. Ohio State, Oregon, that's going to be a tough game for them. And Georgia can do that, but Georgia's also able, they could lose to South Carolina. They don't play South Carolina. I think, thankfully, if you're a Georgia fan, that'd be a tough matchup. And this could all come down to matchups, too. I think that all year long, it's been, the home team has definitely had an advantage, in all conferences, especially in the SEC. But this has been a matchup season, too. Which team matches up best with this team? It's almost like you can throw the rankings out. You have to play your best on the road in the SEC if you're going to win the game. And we've seen that throughout the conference this year. And I think it's going to be tough for Texas to go into College Station and win that game because the last thing they wanted, I think, was for Texas A&M to lose that game the way they did, because they've got to turn it around. And maybe I'm wrong there, but if you're Georgia, again, if you're a Georgia fan, you should be excited about playing the SEC championship game. I don't think the committee is going to drop Georgia out of the top 12 if they lose that extra game that no one else in the conference has to play except for those two teams. I would be very surprised. I think Georgia's in if they beat Georgia Tech, but if they beat Tech and win the SEC title, they have a very real chance of winning another national title. This team can do it, and it's starting to set up nicely for them to get that job done, but got to take care of business. But it looks like right now they may have hit the jackpot. Really big day to be a Georgia fan. You may be a little worrisome about playing an extra game, trying to get a third loss, but I'm telling you, this is the easiest path to Georgia, for Georgia to win another national championship. When the SEC get that bye, go from there. I think they can do it. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you over on the website.